Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori and this is Africa 54. As the search for a missing Malaysian airline flight pushes into its sixth day, confusion and frustration is growing. With few leads for what happened to the jet and its 239 passengers and crew, authorities in Beijing pressed Thursday for the international effort to boost coordination. Viewers Bill Ide has more from the Chinese capital.
The search for Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 continued to widen Thursday. China's state television shared satellite photos of what it called suspicious floating objects in waters off the northeast coast of Malaysia. It was hoped that the objects might have been the passenger jet, but search planes that visited the area Thursday did not find any evidence of the aircraft. At a news conference following a major political meeting in Beijing, the first question Li Keqiang was asked was not about China's economy or reforms, but the hunt for flight MH370.
The Chinese government has asked relevant parties to enhance coordination, investigate the cause, locate the missing plane as quickly as possible, and properly handle all the related matters.
The loved ones of those on board are pressing officials for answers and clarity in cities across the region, from Beijing to Kuala Lumpur and in India. Many were growing increasingly frustrated and skeptical about Malaysia's handling of the search effort after authorities in Kuala Lumpur released conflicting information about where they suspected the plane was headed when it disappeared. The husband of Chandrika Sharma, one of the Indian passengers on board, says he's concerned authorities are not sharing all of their information.
One is left with a creeping suspicion that there is more that's being shared, more there is than that is being shared, and one wonders whose interests are being served or protected by this long wait, and something that's increasingly feeling surreal and is rapidly turning into a farce.
The search area for the vanished passenger jet has expanded to more than 93,000 square kilometers, as far east as the South China Sea and to India's territorial waters. Bill Ide, VOA News, Beijing.
Now, with the search for the missing Malaysian airliner continuing, viewers Carla Babb tells us more about the technology that can find and lose an aircraft.
With satellites crisscrossing the globe and GPS technology available at the touch of a button in everything from cars to cell phones, how did officials lose a massive airplane? Aviation safety consultant John McGraw says it's easier than you think.
People are under the impression that every airplane, even when it's flying across the ocean, is observed on some kind of radar scope with a human being looking at that scope. And it's just not the case. Radars don't reach that far.
But McGraw says there is a lot of technology inside the missing Boeing 777 that helps pinpoint its location. Systems in the jets automatically transmit altitude, weather conditions, position, and speed of an aircraft to traffic control. There are also at least 3 ways the pilot can communicate with officials. If the plane is downed in the ocean, the flight data recorder, or black box, sends out a sound that is detectable up to 3 kilometers away. Former FAA accident investigator Michael Daniels says there are also global regulations.
The airline has a responsibility for what we call flight following. That's an international standard, and they're required to know where the airline is at all times.
But in the case of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, Daniels says the airline hasn't provided a great deal of information.
Standards may not have been followed.
So is that concerning to you?
Oh, it is. It's very concerning because that's an added piece of information that investigators can work with in determining, hopefully, the location of the aircraft.
Rescue crews remain determined to locate the jet and its black box to try to find out what went wrong. After an Air France flight went missing in 2009, the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board called for continuously downloading segments of an aircraft's flight data recorder information in case of emergencies.
And in the past, they haven't been able to justify installing that kind of equipment because it's very expensive and because there hadn't been many accidents where it would have come into play. This will certainly provide some additional motivation, and there may be calls to do that.
Those monitoring the skies and seas remain hopeful the missing airliner will soon be found.
Well, joining Africa 54 again today to explain more about airplane technology is VOA reporter Carla Babb. Welcome again.
Thank you again.
Now, you ended your piece with hope. You say the officials are hoping that they will find this jetliner. What gives them hope?
Well, the former FAA officials that I spoke with reminded me that with the Air France flight of 2009, that took a while to find things. And they're certain that now that they've got grids located via air and via the seas, eventually they will pinpoint where the aircraft is.
Now, there's been this speculation again that the aircraft might have actually flown on for about 4 or so hours after losing communication. Is there a slim chance that this plane might have landed somewhere and perhaps people are sitting on some island or some forest?
Well, that's an interesting theory, but the way that the aircraft is made, there's a black box that will go out if it lands in the ocean that will submit that sound. If it lands on the air, there's this thing called an ELT, an emergency locator transmitter, and that will radiate technology and send that out to where they are on land. And if that was the case, they would have found that already. They would have received that.
And I'm talking about technology. In fact, because of that development of technology, one would think that it's almost impossible for a jet of that size to disappear without trace.
You would think so, and this is the thing that just drives people crazy, because in addition to everything that they told me that's in the aircraft, the airlines themselves go through so many checks. I was on a flight just a month ago. It was an American Airlines flight, and in the cockpit, they have things between the pilot and the co-pilot to communicate, and there's the initial, and then there are 2 redundancies to back that up. And because one of those wasn't working, they didn't let the flight go for about 6 hours.
Wow.
And so you just don't understand sometimes with all of the checks how anything could still go wrong.
Yes. Now, we know that all of us have been waiting for information every day, every minute we're monitoring this, but Malaysian officials have been giving rather conflicting information. How frustrating.
Absolutely. That is one of the things that the FAA officials that I spoke to, the former FAA officials that I spoke to, were very concerned and critical of, because in Malaysia there are 3 voices speaking, and sometimes they're not saying the same thing, like you said. And they really expect the airlines to pick that up and to come out with more of the information, because it's their responsibility.
Yes. Very quickly, has technology advanced so much from 2009 when the French airliner went down?
It has, but it's still really expensive. So they have things to help monitor the engines and such, but the more data you send back and forth, the more it costs to do so.
Carla, thanks. We can only keep hope alive.
Definitely.
Thanks a lot for joining us. Well, Carla Babb reporting here live.